Good morning, everybody. It's Erin here. It's Sunday, December 13th, and we're going to be talking about the tomorrow's new moon in Sagittarius total solar eclipse. And we'll talk about the house activations. I'm going to talk generally and archetypally. This isn't looking directly at your charts, your individual charts, but we are talking about general, and I'll talk about what that means, okay? So I hope you're all well. You know, when we move into these eclipse chapters, which we do a couple times a year, um, or even a full moon phase that's quite intense, or a new moon phase that's quite intense, we can feel it days before. It depends on you. It depends on how sensitive you are and how it depends on you. It depends on your makeup. And it also depends on your chapter of life because there can be you can be sensitized during different chapters of your evolutionary growth process. Again, depending on your blueprint. Um, but some of you, if not all of you, might have been feeling the effects already about what is going to be, let's say, instigated tomorrow, that's leading us up into this conjunction, which is happening in a week, the Saturn Jupiter conjunction. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple things here. First of all, here's the chart. And we're going to open it up again, but I'm going to shrink it just for right now. I'm going to pull it over. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the points or the details here with regards to this particular eclipse. First of all, um, I pulled up the chart for Greenwich Mean Time. I mean, this is a true archetypal chart here because Greenwich Mean Time is kind of, let's say, a standardized time in our human reality at this time. So this particular chart is based on Greenwich. And so, for example, you're going to see the ascendant point, which is at the 0 degrees Cancer, and you're going to see the MC up here at 25 degrees Aquarius. This is based in England time, GMT time. Okay? But this has archetypal meaning for us. So if that comes up in the conversation, which I don't even know if it will, I just want to point that out to you. Okay? So, and I wanted to do that instead of Eastern time simply because there's a standard nature to the GMT, okay? So anyway, with regards to the Sagittarius new moon, it is a total solar eclipse. We are going to see it. I mean, it's happening at GMT time. It's happening at 4:16 p.m. Here on the East Coast US, it's happening at 11:16 a.m. In Pacific time, it'll be 8:16 a.m. So it's happening for a lot of us in daytime hours. So this total solar eclipse will be seen, but where it's most seen and really where it's predominantly seen and observed, or in its totality where the full impact of the total solar eclipse will be seen, is in the southern area, the southern kind of third of South America. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, a couple points about this particular moon. We've had 6 eclipses in 2020. This will be the 6th one. This is the final eclipse of the year. 2020 has been a year like no other, really, at least in our current generations. And even considering recent past generations for the last several hundred years, this is a unique time frame in a lot of ways. Although there's been very intense moments throughout history, we can't deny that. And we can't, oftentimes, we can look at the current times we're living in like the worst ever. But of course, there's been atrocious times in history that have been devastating. And you all know this, but it's important to keep it all in perspective. This is very intense, though. This is a paradigm shifting point, simply because in a week when this conjunction occurs, it hasn't happened. We haven't had this conjunction in air signs for 200 years. So there's a new entire multi-hundred-year chapter that's beginning on top of everything else that's unfolding. And certainly when we talk about things such as climate situations, humanity hasn't, the earth hasn't had the kind of impacts that we might start to see unfolding in the years to come. We've had ice ages, and we've had all kinds of things unfold, great floods, meteors, or whatever it was that impacted the dinosaurs. I mean, we've had massive events happen. But with humans living on this planet, sharing the space with this planet, with civilization as it is, as such, we are in unprecedented times, right? So anyway, yeah, this tomorrow's eclipse is the last of the six that we've had this year. Six is somewhat rare. It's unusual, you know? So the number is unusual. We're ending the year with a bang, and this eclipse is leading us into the Jupiter Saturn conjunction that's happening next week on the 21st. So the timing of it is pristine. There's great alignment to it, and there is a level of intensity to it. And this is the lunar phase. So this particular new moon in Sagittarius, this lunar phase is the exit point for us out of this year. Okay? In addition, the sun moon conjunction, importantly, is happening with the south node. It's also with Mercury, right? So there's this potential for great understandings or clarity. There's also potential for great dogmatism to emerge. It depends on who the person is. But for most, certainly for you all, there is amazing, real potential, if not with certainty. But I mean, I want to say it's certain that you will get clarity on something. But certainly at a foundational level, there's immense potential. Okay. So if you allow the shifts and the changes, there's amazing potential here for great shift. Now, this particular eclipse is trining the conjunction of Mars and Eris. So we have, first of all, these are siblings here in mythology. So we have the male and the female counterparts of war. Mars and Eris are different. Eris is more strife, discord, and chaos. And in looking at some of the history of the mythology with Eris last night, she has different reputations depending on where she comes from, how different cultures mythologized her. So I invite you to look that up if you feel compelled to do that. But Eris brings discord and some sort of disharmony. In fact, she's considered the counterpart to harmonia. Okay, so there's harmony and there's non-harmony, essentially. So Eris can be a catalytic force to create something that alters harmony. In other words, part of natural process is chaos process. And in that process, which is ordered and it is a natural process, it can feel inharmonious. So there's reason, there's purpose, there's correctness to process with Eris, involving Eris, but it can bring strife, and it can bring upsetment to people. Okay, so we have Mars and Eris, two kind of fiery energies, the warrior and one who brings discord, at least potentially. So the trine activation of these energies in Mars with that sun moon, we'll talk about, we'll look at that. Importantly too, this particular new moon is intrinsically enmeshed and heavily influenced by the following house. And the reason being is that if we look up here, in fact, let me pull up my highlighter. I'm just going to point out what I'm looking at here. So you can see here that the sun moon is conjunct the south node in Mercury. It's trining that Eris Mars, and it's involving the next house. Why? Because this is a Sagittarius new moon ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is with Pluto and Saturn. In fact, what we have here is not just the next house. It is the next house because the stellium is here in the 10th house, Capricorn 10th. This is the archetypal journey that we're moving through here. But we actually also, because Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, we also have Scorpio implicated, right? And this is something that we already know. We've talked about in the past. But Scorpio, Jupiter, Saturn, this section of the chart, this section of our lives, power dynamics, belief systems, work career, and life patterning and the goals that we seek to attain, these have all been implicated in this great stellium throughout 2020, right? So this house, though, this 10th house, this Capricorn house, is intricately implicated in this particular new moon because it's a Jupiter ruled moon. So that's something to pay attention to. And then, very importantly as well, let me go ahead and turn this off for now. Very importantly as well, everybody, is that this particular new moon is happening one day before Venus enters Sagittarius and Chiron goes direct in Aries, which is, of course, ruled by Mars, which is implicated in this conjunction. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that there's this very rapid layering of events that's leading us to, number one, to exiting this year and entering the new year, but certainly leading us up to this conjunction point of Saturn Jupiter. Okay. And we can't deny the fact that Jupiter, where the new moon is occurring, is ruled by Jupiter. So the new alignment of self, inner and outer self, is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is the planet that's conjuncting with Saturn for this new great conjunction, new paradigm shifting point. So the new moon of self, as it relates to you as an individual, is leading you up to a more collective shift and change, and also a big shift and change happening in your life. So there's things rearticulating in your belief systems that's helping you prepare naturally for what's to come. It's like settling you into some new understanding, some new assimilated wisdom, right? But the thing is, too, it's happening a day before Venus enters Sagittarius. Why is that important? Well, there's something about that. Venus is your value system. Venus is love, how you receive love, how you engage with life in order to know or experience love or be loved. It's also money and finances. It's also abundance. It's also beauty, natural beauty, aesthetics, So beauty, love, abundance, values, how we love and value the self, etc. So when we're talking about Scorpio exiting Scorpio, okay? So right now, Venus is at the end point of Scorpio. When this new moon occurs, it's at this 28-degree 45-minute point. So the signature for this particular new moon does have a Plutonic Scorpionic Venus. This might place a lot of value on money and power. It might place a lot of value on sexual relationships or past trauma and wounds. It might value the wounded identity, for example, the wounded patterns of the self. So this particular new moon is asking for a new understanding of the old wounds that we cling to so much to help identify our sense of self-worth. Okay? So there's a natural orientation here to this particular goal of this lunar cycle. But This is happening right prior to Venus entering Sag, ruled by Jupiter. This is a much more optimistic place for Venus. There's a new direction. There's some optimism and a new path forward with regards to a Sagittarius Venus. There's a love of new experiences, new learnings, new understandings, new people, new cultures, new adventures via travel or not. This can be learning about places versus traveling to places if need be. But the thing is, there's a new Jupiterian aspect to Venus that's coming into play. And this new moon is setting us up for a new value system, literally. Okay. So a new sense of love, a new belief in your lovability, a new belief in money and finances. What can you do to earn money ethically in a way that serves, in a way that brings your wisdom forward into the world, right? All of this kind of stuff. So the fact is that this new moon is leading us into a new kind of understanding, a new kind of self-love, a new belief system about love, okay, and money and values and the self, the worth of the self. In addition, and perfectly aligned is Chiron moving direct, also happening on Tuesday, and it's happening in Mars, which is important because again, the new moon is prepping us for the signature for the month is align with correct beliefs or assimilated wisdom that you yourself have experienced. There's a new learning, a new articulation, a new iteration of your truths that's wanting to be birthed here with this new moon. With Chiron going direct, there's a possibility to really bring out your inner healer, bring out your inner teacher that has developed from your own assessment and your own work that you've done on your own wounds. So, this lunar cycle has a lot of potential to bring a new sense of self, a new sense of identity, a new sense of optimism. See, that's definitely indicated here. Anytime, every year, when there's a new moon in Sagittarius, there's a new opportunity to re-believe, to have faith in things, to have faith in life, to have faith in natural law. Sagittarius rules natural law, okay? So this is juicy stuff here, okay? Now, in a general way, let's take a look at the chart and then we'll look at the houses. All right. In fact, I'm going to put this down for now. Let's open up the chart a little bit. Okay. Let me take a look here. Okay. The first thing out of the gate, the first thing that I want to talk to is the 29-degree Saturn. Because the issue with any 29-degree planet, of course, as you all know, is that it's a critical degree. Why? Because it's the end of an archetypal journey, and the planet is about to enter a new archetypal path, a new archetypal experience set. So the critical degree indicates that there is a bit of a pressure or even a resistance, perhaps, for the human psyche about this function of the self leaving the known and entering the unknown. And because there's pressure or resistance about leaving the known, it can regress. So there's regressive Saturnian aspects or qualities of self that will be naturally activated during this time frame. Others are going to step into the maturity that's called with this point. The 29-degree Saturn is about assimilating a sense of maturity, accountability, and responsibility for your own path, for your own life, for your own life structure, for your own career, for your own goals, for the trajectory that you're going or desire to go in your life. There's a level of total accountability here that's called. But the regressed way that this energetic can operate is it can be overly controlling. An individual, needs to control their environment, their circumstances, their context. They can be too rigidly attached to certain outcomes, which means that they can let go of opportunities that emerge and are right in front of them. So, literally, it can be such a level of reduced observational abilities that they can't see the opportunities right in front of them. Okay. So, and also being too serious. So, one of the regressed ways by which a 29-degree Saturn can operate, especially in its own sign of Capricorn, is it can be way too serious and rigidly attached to a very reduced thing. So, a particular path. So that's part of the growth edges for all of us as individuals, is to open yourself up, because there's lots of potential here. And of course, that's going to come into play once the conjunction occurs, and the unfolding 20 years is going to be all about diversification in various ways. New iterations, new diversification, many different opportunities, going with the flow of sudden changes that occur and going with that flow. But here we're coming into, a week before the new conjunction occurs, there can be a level of fear. This can be fear. The other thing with Saturn, everybody, is that Saturn rules karma. There's aspects of karmic processes in the life that is ruled by Saturn. And this rules time. In Saturn rules our physical manifestation here on Earth, essentially. So we as each, as a physical being, as a physical entity, are very bound by time, right? So we understand life as a linear projection. But of course, life, the source field, underneath this lived time space portal that we live on called Earth, there isn't time. It's circular, it's spiral. So linear time and the need for material proof or material results, this can also be the growth edge with this Saturn. Now, the reason why I'm spending so much time on this, I actually don't really know, but it's correlated with this new beginning, the new beliefs that are called to manifest in this next lunar cycle. This month ahead calls for a new level of real world being that's based on your own experiences, your own personal experiences that have developed your constructs of truth, that have developed your belief systems and your philosophies and your worldview. So, expressing the truths of who you are based on your own experience requires letting some of your thoughts go, some of the way that your mind operates go. Mercury, Moon, Sun with the South Node. There's ways of being and ways of believing that must be released for the new understandings, the new, broader, expanded understandings to come into play, to birth. Okay, so lots of understandings to come about with this 29-degree critical degree function inside of you and each of us, that is this Saturn 29 function. Because the collective is going through this, but each of us as individuals also has this going on. So there's a need to let go of control. There's a need to become accountable and responsible for your own life, for your own path, for your own physical existence, for your own life as you've lived it in this time space experience. There might even be and I've said this before to you, but there might even be life reviews here playing out, especially here. We've had the South Node going through this space. Mercury has entered this space. We've already talked about life reviews. They've been activated for me without question, but with this new moon in Sagittarius, definitively the case. For this next lunar cycle, life reviews, and certainly for this next week. The rest of this week with Saturn at 29 degrees Capricorn, you better believe you're going to be thinking about things. There will be memories popping up. There will be things emerging in your mind. Memories. Okay? And this is the case too, by the way, because Venus is in Scorpio, oriented with this eighth house, and governed by Mars, traditional ruler, and Pluto, modern ruler. But there is an energy about valuing the past, valuing your memories, valuing the pain body that is influencing your patterns. Because this is a signature for this next lunar cycle, yes, you will place value on the past, and you will place value on exploring your psychological roots, your wounded pattern roots, the source of those wounds, etc. And because of this, you're going to need to, ideally, optimally, you will take that information and you will learn from it. It's not about wallowing in depression about the pain or the experiences. It's about understanding why, what was the function of it? How did it serve me? How did those experiences serve me? How am I changed today because of those experiences? And because of that, there will be beliefs that emerge that are called to be realigned. And again, especially in this week, as we navigate this week of the 14th through the 21st, yeah, there's going to be a time review of this life. Okay. Now, let's see what else we have here. Just give me a second here. Let's talk about the trine. So, with regards to the new moon trining Mars Eris, you know, this is independence here. This is individuation here. There is a need for the individual to be heard, to take action on behalf of themselves, to initiate according to their anger or rage or their passion, to initiate leadership, individuals becoming their own leaders. This is part of this chapter, this 6 month, 5 to 6 month chapter where we've had Mars going through, Aries. But this combination of the two is, kind of taking action to create disruption. And it is naturally, harmonically connected to um, beliefs that are triggered. And for some people, okay, so let's call it for half of the population, okay, for about half the population, maybe even more, there is going to be insistences occurring, insistences of taking action, in some cases violent action, in some cases disruptive action, that's based on their own belief systems that are antiquated or that are toxic. Why? Because the new moon is happening with the mind that has to do with patterns that are not healthy, that need to be released, that need to be let go. Why? Because the individuals that are so angry are taking action on behalf of belief systems that are not their own. They may not realize it, but these beliefs are not their own. They were fed it through their upbringing, their religion, their society, their particular, family cultural dynamics, whatever it might be. But it is critical for awakened individuals to understand why they feel so triggered. Because when they understand the trigger, then they can release into the new iteration and step away from the individual self, the personality. 23 degrees sun located here at Sagittarius. This is the personality of the person. This is who they are being in the world. Okay, so there's an opportunity to align the inner with the outer, but for some people, they are going to align based on old, antiquated beliefs, constructs of truth, worldviews that are simply what was fed to them that they assimilated and took on as their own. Again, North Node in Gemini is about thinking for yourself, not according to a group, whatever that group looks like, not according to a group, certainly not according to a cult. Certainly not according to what any big structure or even assimilated structure of individuals that feel quite angry about things and very violent, and they're going to fight for their rights for X, Y, or Z with their guns or their weapons, right? The growth edge here is the hard thing because it's not the known thing, and it takes a conscious and awake individual to think for themselves. And what that means is um, not needing the validation or the love or the acceptance of family, friends, group, or religious affiliation, or the cultists that are what you're associated with, the group that you're associated with. Okay? So this is about thinking for yourself, discerning for yourself. And it's also, by the way, about letting go the individual alignment, the potential for this lunar cycle, certainly the potential as we exit 2020, is to realign with truth here. Truth, natural law, and many other things here. But there's a level of truth here that needs to be discerned because the correlation with the sun, moon, with Mercury, south node is all kinds of paradox here. Again, about half the population is going to really take on board this nodal evolutionary point and really come from a point of a mature 29-degree accountability for your own life. For your own life. Okay? This is not, there's no need to blame X, Y, or Z. There is a level of accountability here, a level of self responsibility here. There's a level of maturity here that's called to evolve. And so, again, in this week leading up to the Great Conjunction, uh, my members who I'm recording this for, and I'm realizing that I am going to go ahead and post this on the public channel. So as you hear me speaking to you, my members, just understand that I'm actually speaking. I started speaking to the collective about 10 minutes ago. Okay. So, so for my members, for example, this is about you taking action on behalf of your own true desires and passions, and to creating the disruption in your life that's necessary in order for you to catalyze a new beginning. So, the great thing for those who are awake and don't need to turn to guns or antiquated worldviews based on what they were fed and taking action on that, for those that are awake and maturing, this is a time for you to disrupt your life accordingly in order to start the new chapter, in order to start the new adventure, to think optimistically about the path ahead. 2021 will be a rough ride in many respects, especially the first half of the year. But individuals don't have to succumb to the collective trauma by the masses who are unawake. Okay, so we can stand in maturity, we can stand in new optimistic orientation, we can let go of what we recognize is not our own belief systems or the dogma that was taught and imbibed as truth, but really is just a belief system of somebody else. And we can really step into the maturation of the mind. And for 2021 and beyond, using the tool of the mind as a tool, because that's what it is. This is about using it as a tool for your own benefit, for your own flow, for your own life process in a way that's optimal and aligned and flowing, but also using it as a tool to work with consciousness, not only on your own behalf, but on behalf of the collective in a benefic way, right? Now, the other thing that we have here with this new moon process and total solar eclipse, and we'll talk about the eclipse aspect in a minute here, is that we also have, of course, Uranus playing a role. We have, what do we have Uranus doing here? We have it squaring Varuna. We have it squaring, well, see, this is the big thing. And actually, we're ending 2020 we're ending 2020 with this new moon cycle about a new story, right? There's a new story that's possible here for the individual if they let go of old worldviews, if they let go of old dogmas, insistences. This is truth, I'm true, you're not true, black and white, for example. Okay? This is black, this is white, there's no gray, right? But there's something very specific that that's activated for this new moon and this completion of 2020 that we've actually had for a few months now, couple months, which is the square between Saturn and Uranus. This is going to be active throughout 2021. And this square is going to be challenging in some respects. It's definitely going to be challenging, but it will also enable a level of boundary to the radicalization or the callousness or the cruelty, even the apathetic way of operating that can be activated with Saturn processes. Because the truth is, Saturn and Aquarius are very similar in many ways. They're different, but they're similar. They're similar in that they're both cold, non emotive archetypes. So the square between these can be very intense and it can be very cruel, callous, apathetic, you know. It can instigate things just for the sake of some sort of an end point or a product to be manifested by any means necessary. In some regards, some people will do that. I don't care what it takes. I'm just going to do it without any ethical alignment. And again, you, my members, have heard me talk about that before. So, very, very critical here with this square to really take the reins of your own life, to take responsibility, because the truth is the square can help manifest. And keep in mind, Saturn's going to be in a week moving into Aquarius. But throughout 2021, this square is going to be active. Saturn squaring Uranus can create a focused manifestation of the new sense of self-worth, self-value, income streams that can be accountable and responsible. Again, it depends on who the individual is. Some people are going to be unethical with this orientation and callous and cruel even. There is a cruelty indicated, okay? And some people are going to be emotionless as they take actions toward being the rebel. I'm going to be the rebel, okay? And I'm focused on it and I'm serious about it and blah, 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 okay? But the point is that this particular lunar cycle as we exit 2020 has this activation. So for those of us who are aware and present moment oriented and very self-reflective and awake and to what's going on, this can bring maturity. This can be a nice level of focus, boundary, and again, some sort of a container for the new action that's calling, the new value system that's pushing forward, the new sense of self that's moving forward. Do you understand? So this can be quite delicious here. I think that's all I want to talk about. What about Neptune? And we still have Neptune squaring the nodes. See, this is a long-term activation as well. Okay, so we have, and I say long-term, we've been in it for a couple months. We will have it for a month or two. You know, certainly for this lunar activation, we have this activated. We have it. So we're ending 2020 and starting 2021 with a growth edge here, a collective skipped step that must be grown and evolved. South node Sag, North node Gemini squaring Neptune. The whole thing here, everybody, I mean, it's so easy, it's so clear. The beauty of astrological systems, because it's a natural system and we all operate by organizational principles, the easy thing to see here is what's calling. What are these archetypes and what are they calling to grow or mature or evolve? What is the evolutionary path here? Well, as we move out of dogma into independent individual mind and thought, delusion, illusion, hyper compassion, as it creates rose colored lenses and altered filters of reality. In other words, the inability to see reality. So the growth edge is learn to see reality for what it is in this plane, on this planet, real world. People do who they are. Watch their actions versus what they speak. There's no need to join with any cultist factions. This is about seeing clearly. That's the work, and it is the great work here. Okay, so this particular lunar cycle completely activated here. All kinds of stories and confusion and mythologies and delusion, illusion, visualizations, images coming into the mind based on, for some people, dogmas, worldviews that they've been fed, taught, that they've consumed and assimilated, and they think it's their mind. But there's questioning here to do. Self-inquiry work is here to do. It's critical, okay? So that's what I want to talk about. Let's take a look at the houses here. I'm going to take off this highlighter. And let's see. Let's go ahead and make this small again. Pop this up in the corner, okay? All right. Let's move this over. And I'm going to pop this over too. Okay, great. All right, beauties. So let's take a look here. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about how you're going to be activated, this is for everybody listening. This is to my members. This is to those watching on the public channel. Please keep in mind, everybody, that when astrologers speak about how you're going to be activated by any particular moon, you have to understand that they're general. So what they're doing is they're taking the archetypal chart here and they're applying it to your personal chart. But the truth of the matter is your personal chart will alter depending on where on the planet you were born, what time you were born, when you were born, what it's based on your natal blueprint. Okay? So for example, here, when we're looking at Aries, so for example, those of you born with Aries Ascendant, now what I'm going to talk about is the activation is happening in your ninth house. The new moon is happening in your ninth house with the 10th house impacted. So this is the house of career. Okay, so the ninth house of belief is impacted with the career being impacted, and it's trining with the first house with Eris Mars there. But please, please understand that depending on what Aries degree point you were born at, and depending on the layout of your chart, depending on where you were born on the planet and all of your other birth details, this is going to be different. It might be that you're an Aries ascendant, but actually the activation might be happening in your 8th house or your 10th house. Okay. So it's really important to understand that. Okay. So you want to look at your own chart. Okay. So anyway, for predominantly here for my members, let's talk about what I see here generally. Okay. Again, with the Aries ascendant, the new moon is happening in the 9th house. And this is going to be potential for a release of old beliefs, quite literally, because Sagittarius is correlated with the 9th house. So old beliefs, there can be an old belief that gets clear. There might be a revelation here, a revelation about something that you always thought was true, but you suddenly realize it wasn't. It wasn't. It's not. Either it was at one time and it no longer is, and you're willing to get rid of it over this lunar cycle, or you realize that it was never true to begin with. So for Aries ascendants, generally, if you have this activation happening in your ninth house, a belief can leave. A way of thinking can alter, can leave. Again, revelation and release when it comes to beliefs. Now, the house being impacted is the 10th, which is your goals, your life path, your career. So, whatever clarification arises for you during this total solar eclipse new moon cycle, it's going to impact your goals. Something's going to get clear and it's going to alter your path or your career, right? Now, the trine happening with Mars Aries in the first house is fabulous because the clarity and the career and the goals for your life being changed will naturally be catalyzing a new level of energy within you, a new drive, a new energy, like a new vitality could be implicated here for Aries ascendants, again, generally. If we're talking about Taurus ascendants, if you were born with the Taurus ascendant, again, generally, this particular eclipse, new moon eclipse, is going to be happening in your eighth house, potentially. And the eighth house is about revelations coming up, about wounded past, about your patterns, about power dynamics. For those of you that are partnered with a spouse or a long term partnership, or even those of you with maybe other intimate bonded partnerships, maybe it's a business partnership with a lot of shared resources in the business, etc. There can be revelations coming about with regards to the person or the shared dynamic with this person. Okay, so something might be, you might become aware of something. There might be something that you learn. Okay, something might be learned. It might be a secret revealed because it's eighth house. So you learn something that has been a secret for years, maybe for your entire life, that's going to create a new level of understanding. I'm getting a lot of chills with this particular one, so pay attention to that. It's going to impact the ninth house for you, which is the house of new explorations, learnings, philosophies, higher education, new experiences. Now we're not traveling, but we will be, so something about new horizons. But also, this is about belief systems again. So your construct of truth is impacted by the secret coming to light. Something comes to light. And again, the something that comes to light can be about your own power dynamics, how you seek to hold power or have power or whatever. Most specifically, though, I do see clarity with regards to patterning and your psychological wounded storyline, the story that lives in your psyche, the stuff that has been in the shadowed realm. In other words, deep stuff about yourself that you didn't know may have been secret, quote unquote, from yourself, is going to come to light. There's a potential for that. And it's going to impact what you believe about yourself and what you believe about life in general, potentially. Now, the trine is happening to your 12th house with Mars and Eris. Now, Mars and Eris 12th is creating a new level of energy and drive with regards to spiritual pursuits, pursuits with regards to going within. There might be further call to dive deeper in meditation ritual. Maybe it becomes a daily practice for you. I mean, when we're talking about the 8th and the 12th houses, these are houses of the deep psyche and the deep spiritual consciousness layer of who you are, right? It's unconscious and subconscious layers for you. So the awareness and the revelation is impacting beliefs, but it's also impacting you on an existential level. So, a new level of existential driver. And it does include potentially going into, for example, building new daily rituals or structures in your day. meditation every morning at 6 a.m., for example, right? So there's some level of the desire to go in, to isolate and get quiet and still within your own consciousness in order to connect to that deeper layer of real truth. Okay. If you are a Gemini ascendant, potentially this is occurring in your seventh house. This particular eclipse, Sagittarius seventh, is about being awakened to something that you believed the other person was. And maybe you find out that they're not that at all, that it was an illusion. Okay. So there's something very specifically for Geminis about waking up to some illusion or delusion. And again, I say that because we have that square to Neptune, but it has to do with what you thought a person was. You thought they were someone or somebody or had certain qualities, but actually they don't. And so the eclipse here could eclipse out a relationship. It could eclipse out teachers in your world. So if you know of people who taught you, it could you could either get cut off by the person or you could cut out the person because you're needing, now you've had revelation and there's a need for some sort of a boundary. Maybe there was an illusion shattered, and that eclipse will mean that you're requiring to self-assess essentially. There's going to be some self-assessment that's going to be required here, especially with the North Node in your sign, right? Because for Geminis, the evolutionary path for Geminis is to know themselves via their own construct of identity versus the identity that they think the other wants to see of you. Okay. Now, the Gemini ascendant people, the eighth house will be impacted here, which means that if the eclipse creates an awareness of an illusion, that maybe also creates an eclipsing out of a relationship, yes, you better believe the eighth house will be impacted because this is your psyche that's wounded. So it's, in other words, it's going to trigger a deeper wound, Gemini. Okay. For you, you're going to have to feel your feelings here. There might be some grief arising. So feel your feelings. It's okay to have grief arise. All of these aspects of self here need to be recognized and have a life. These aspects, these qualities of the lived experience need to be expressed. Repressing them creates illness and all kinds of other skewed manifestations of natural energy flow. So, yeah, go in, feel the grief. If there's grief around it, go there. And if there's a pattern you need to further recognize, go there. Okay. Now, this is trining the 11th house. The 11th house has to do with groups and friends. It also has to do with hopes, wishes, and dreams, which is interesting because there will be some new level of energy that you might put forward in your groups because there's an illusion with a particular relationship that has dissolved away. In other words, there could be a spouse relationship or a business partner relationship that now is no longer, or the illusion has popped the bubble of joy. And so you might be really connecting with friends during this time because you might need counseling, right? But Mars and Eris is also about hopes, wishes, and dreams. So the up levelings, hopefully, of old illusions into new clarity with regards to relationships, hopefully is going to have you dream your own dream for yourself. Again, especially as you have the North Node in your first house, archetypally. Okay. Cancer. For Cancer, this particular eclipse, new moon total solar eclipse, is occurring in your sixth house of health and work. Okay. Now, the sixth house rules other things too, including small animals. And so I want to bring that up because it could be that those of you with animals, those of you with the Cancer ascendant that does happen to have this eclipse happening in their sixth house, there is a potential here for an animal to transition. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a possibility here. It also could be that there's a health issue that arises with an animal that you have, a pet that you have. But Cancer is also with your own health. Now, you might have very well been feeling over the previous week or even 2 weeks a call to make a change with your health regimen, your diet, your exercise, your pattern, your life pattern, the pattern of your day that is more healthy. Okay. Now, if you have been heeding the call and doing these things, this is fantastic because it's been prepping you for this process that's now unfolding. If those Cancer ascendants that have this occurring in your sixth house have ignored calls to make changes with diet or exercise, if you have had issues come up with the body, pains, aches, unusual things coming up, and you've been ignoring them, I want to give you a warning that you need to heed the call now. It's important because this particular total solar eclipse can bring some sort of impact to your vitality at a minimum, okay? Because we have a solar eclipse. You know, the sun is being covered by the moon here. So there's an inner thing that's covering your vitality. And so Cancer, what is the inner thing that's activated for you? Keep in mind, for Cancer ascendant people, the North Node for you is in your 12th house. So your work is to let go of the stress of the daily minutia and to move into your spiritual growth edge here. This is about going in and understanding yourself. This is about quieting your life, slowing your life a bit, letting go of being tied up and busy with material reality, even though there's all kinds of excuses and reasons to be busy with it. This is about creating time and space and quiet and reflection. This is about really connecting. And so the thing is, because you have the South Node, North Node axis here, you're going to have to let go of old beliefs that are impacting your health overall. That's just an overall thing for you right now. Okay. So this particular eclipse is really calling you to take action. Okay. Now, this is also about certain beliefs that you've held about work. So there's a potential for some real revelation and clarity and maybe purging happening with your work. All right. This is going to impact your seventh house, which is your house of relationships, which is being impacted by the great stellium, Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. So, seventh house people, there's going to be maybe alterations. Maybe you're going to cut people away. Maybe people will cut you away. Career oriented people, because there's a shift happening with work, there could be that you're not seeing the people that you normally saw, right? Because you're not going into work, you're working from home or whatever it might be. The trine is happening to the 10th house for you with Mars and Eris. So this is career. And I have to tell you, this is about letting go of old work and making the alterations with the relationships that you've needed and fed upon all these years with the work associates. But your trine to the 10th house, Mars, Eris in Aries, is about independent action, leadership. This is about possibly entrepreneurial work. So this is about taking your own action for your own life path, for your own career, for something new. Okay? So there might be impetus to develop something new, Cancer. Okay? Now for Leo, this particular new moon eclipse is happening in your 5th house. There is something about the ego identity, something about how you think about yourself, what you believe you are, who you believe you are, what you believe your skills are. There's something about what you believe your creativity limits are, or what you're here to do in order to what? Appease family? So something very specific for Leo is the eclipsing out of being who other people think you need to be, or who society or the cultural paradigm says that you were to be in this life. That is to be eclipsed out here. It needs to be eclipsed out. But are you going to stick to it and go against the nature of your evolution, or are you going to cling to it? Or are you going to move forward and really understand the truth of who you are? The thing is, for Leo, your North Node is happening in your 11th house, Leo. So what that means is that for the archetype of Leo, the evolutionary trajectory for you is about letting go of the need for love, adoration, respect, to have an audience, to be ego stroked, to be from the state of the inner narcissist or the inner person who's entitled to be loved and adored and respected, etc. Your North Node in the 11th house in Aquarius or in Gemini, Leo, is to do the work, be the creative self, but to do it for the good of the collective without any need for love, adoration, respect, audience. Okay, this is about just doing the good, doing the good, doing it for the collective. Okay. So there's something about understanding how you have been who other people taught you to be or led you to believe you had to be. And the sixth house is impacted naturally. And the sixth house, of course, is your work. So there's something changing with your work, ideally. There might be a catalytic change happening, especially with this new conjunction happening in a week. So in the first month of 2021, you might very well start to feel catalytic shift and change here. It's trining the ninth house. And I have to tell you, for you, there's something very specific, Leo, about teaching and communicating to the collective. Okay. So the trine with Mars Eris in your ninth is about new understandings. You want to, you're driven to, you're motivated to understand things from a different perspective, from a new perspective, from an expanded perspective. This is about almost learning who you are anew. And so for you, you're moving into a whole new process for you for the next 20 years, essentially, because now I'm referring to the conjunction that we're going to have. You're moving into a whole new self, right? So it's really important that you realize that your sense of identity, your sense of your true sense of individuation, not the lower functioning ego identified self, but the higher functioning pure Leo self, purely confident. It's not arrogant and entitled when it's in its pure iteration. If it's wounded, if it's scarred, if there's patterning that's linking to not having the true confidence of self, you better believe there's going to be narcissism that emerges because they're overcompensating for not feeling confident or loved, right? Very easy, all very easy to understand here. It's all very logical. So when we talk about Leo, fifth house, letting go of old beliefs of self, it does have to do with what others told you you were. So there's an entire new self emerging. It does involve work. It does involve that 11th house of serving the collective, and it does involve teaching and communicating because the North Node is in Gemini. Virgo. If you are a person who has a Virgo ascendant and you happen to have this occurring in your fourth house, wow. Okay. So this is going to be some kind of revelation coming about when it comes to your past, your childhood, your mother. Something about your home or property could come to light. There could be a belief system, for example, Virgo, that you held with regards to having a home or having a place to live or having, for example, sticks and bricks, as they call it, like this nomad life trend that we've been seeing growing since 2012 or something. See, for you, there could be some kind of rearticulation of your belief system around home, what it means to feel safe, what it means to feel secure, what it means to feel loved. What is it that makes you feel nurtured? These are changing. The beliefs that you held around what I need in order to feel nurtured and protected and safe and comforted in my own home sanctuary, maybe it's changing. So, for example, maybe you were somebody who, what is your natural ruler of? It's, well, Sagittarius, Jupiter. So, for example, for Virgos, I wonder if for you it could be that in the past, or for throughout your life, perhaps maybe you had certain belief systems that were, and it depends if you're a Virgo with Sagittarius, Jupiter ruling your IC point. But for those of you with that, it could be that you grew up with a certain belief about the grass is always greener on the other side. The grass is greener in the other country. The grass is greener in another home or a bigger home. Okay. So the grass is always greener might have been, let's say, a paradigm for you, a construct of your reality that you just lived in. With this particular new moon, with that Mercury South node, there is a real potential to eclipse out old stagnant beliefs that simply don't apply to the truth of who you are. Again, depending on the distinct nature of your natal blueprint, because you're a distinct entity here. Okay. So there's something about, um, I need the bigger house. I need the better house. It's better over there. I'm not happy here. I need the adventure, or I want multiple homes, or it could be many things here. But there's something about home property for some of you. In another way though, I have to tell you the biggest meat of the story here is that there will be some revelation and release of an old belief about your feelings, having feelings, expressing your feelings, because depending on who you are, you're distinct. You have a very distinct makeup. You're each different listening to this. But chances are that there was, for some of you that have some real issues, um, sharing your emotions, or what's the word I'm looking for here? Expressing yourself emotionally, having feelings, admitting you're having feelings, expressing to people what your feelings are. For those Virgos that have had those issues, it's based on belief systems which are based on past experiences, and these create patternings. And it's based on your natal blueprint, which was the story that created your childhood experience, right? As within, so without. So your inner narrative created the dynamics with mother figures, family figures, your childhood experiences. Okay? So the point is that Virgos do have an opportunity, and indeed a strong potential here, to clear out old beliefs about themselves, about their feelings, about their mother. So for some of you too, there's beliefs about your actual mother that you're going to alter, that you're going to wake up to, hopefully, that you're going to become aware of and become accountable to, and question them then. You get to understand your own belief structure and what that's based on. Okay? So there's beliefs about mother, there's beliefs about home and property and what it means to feel safe. There's beliefs about your feelings, or having feelings, or expressing your feelings, that you're going to awaken to here. Okay? Now, the fifth house is going to be impacted, of course, and the fifth house is your individuated self. So you better believe that when you become awake and aware and clear old stagnant beliefs about your inner true self here, your fourth house is your inner foundations, who you are inside, and also what your desires are, by the way. This is also another thing. There could be an alteration of your desires. What you thought you desired is actually not what you desire, as it relates to home and family, as it relates to family relationships or the relationship with your mother, whatever. But as it relates to your desires in general, Virgo, there's clarity coming, and it's impacting your fifth house of your individuated self, your skills, your creative flow, who you are and what you're here to be in a confident way. It's altering too. This is part of a transformational process that's ongoing for you. And it's trining the eighth house. So you better believe there is some deep work here for Virgos over this time frame. So the fourth house trining the eighth house is deep work. Fourth, eighth, 12th. Okay? Deep emotions, deep psyche, deep consciousness layer. Okay? So for you, there is stuff coming up from the psyche. There's memories coming up with regards to your patterning, with regards to your wound signatures, with regards to your past. Let them come up. Feel your feelings. Again, I've said that for somebody else here. But yeah, this is important for you. Okay? Libra. For those of you born with a Libra ascendant, it's possible that you have this conjunction happening in your third house. This is the house of your mind. This is the house of where you focus, how you communicate. It's the house of networking. Okay? So, social networking, etc. It's certainly an active house. It's the house of learning and curiosity. But what I want you to focus on is the mind. This is the house of the mind. So Libra, for you, the house of the mind is Sagittarian, okay? At least for a good portion of you, let's call it. Not for all of you. Jupiter is not ruling all of your third houses. Some of you it is, some of you it's not. So for you, this particular new moon eclipse is happening in your mind. That means that there is an awareness. There's a real possibility for you for a revelation and clarity and a release to come when it comes to the tapes that have been running in your head in the background that impact how you communicate, your voice via oral or written communications, or your dynamics with small social networks. There's an impact here where you become aware of the tapes running based on belief systems that you were fed, that you were taught. That's part of your makeup, by the way. This is part of your natal makeup when you were born. Okay, so for you, there is an awareness here, and there's a possibility to alter, to change, to become aware of the running tape that's in the background, and to stop, to cease, to question it, to be curious about it. There's nothing wrong with the tape. The tape is talking to you. So eventually it doesn't want to just run in the background. It's going to run louder and louder though in our lives if we don't stop to listen to what it's saying and actually question it. So have these conversations with your inner tape. These are not vilified aspects of the self. They're part of you. So it will speak louder if you're continuing to ignore it and deny it, right? That's the paradox. It doesn't go away if you deny it or ignore it. You have to listen to it. And then you get to question it. Because the fact is that the tapes are always based on old beliefs, based on old experiences, which is based in wounded patterning. Always. Okay? So for you, Libra, it's impacting your fourth house. So the clarity of mind, where are we? The clarity of mind is impacting your emotions. And it's also impacting your family dynamics. So there's something about the clarity that's going to create more accountability for your own feelings, for your own experiences in your childhood, for your own experiences or your own relationship dynamics, how you come to the fore in the relationship with your own mother or the maternal figure for you. So, clarity and accountability emotionally is going to come about, okay? It's trining the seventh house. So, it's also going to impact relationships. So, the clarity of mind and communications is going to energize and, by the way, also create some disruption potentially with your communications with people. So, in other words, depending on who you are and how evolved or how awake or how present moment you are in your engagements in your life from morning to night, there's a possibility for impassioned conversations that are very mature and grounded with people. But for some of you too, there's possibility for arguments and creating all kinds of disruption if you're not understanding what this eclipse is actually doing to mature you at this time. Scorpio. If you were born with a Scorpio ascendant, it's very likely that this particular new moon eclipse is occurring in your second house. The second house is the house of your firmament, your values, your living surviving, meeting your own basic essential needs. It's your income stream. Importantly, everybody, the second house is the house of values, and that equates to your own self-worth. In other words, we only want to survive if we value ourselves and we value this life, right? So the second house has many different functions, as do all of the houses. But for Scorpio, there's some sort of revelation and clarity and release as it relates to a certain belief system about money. Second house is our money, our possessions, our things that we think help keep us safe and secure. There's a belief system around those things. Let me raise this up a little bit here. Okay. There's a belief system that Scorpios have held with regards to money. I need money or X amount of money in order to feel safe and secure. Or I need these things in my reality in order to feel safe and secure. The truth of the matter is, this eclipse could enable new beliefs to emerge and indeed a new purging. So there could be a purging of things. You might have possessions that you wish to sell. You might wish to lighten your load, your physical load, your material load in this life. And now we are in winter months in the Northern Hemisphere, but you might make a list now of things that you wish to purge or eliminate in your life. There is a certain lightness of being that is a potential for a lot of you. For some of you, this can create a certain level of gripping with regards to money, and almost like a level of hyper independence as it relates to insistence about making your own money. When Scorpio, for you, the North Node is in the 8th house. The 8th house, Gemini, for Scorpio is about opening your mind to collaborations, because it's through teamwork and shared resources that partnerships can actually enable money and abundance to flow in meaningful ways. That's the growth for Scorpio. Okay. So here the eclipse is enabling you. It really is possible for a lot of you listening to this that you really will go with this flow of the eclipse, and you're going to let go of a hyper independent orientation. I can take care of myself. I can make my own money. I can do it on my own. Okay. So, and this is impacting your 3rd house, which is the way you think and the way you communicate and your small networks. So there's something here about new understandings of your self-worth, new understandings of your value as a human being generally, a new level of value. By the way, this is important. I want Scorpio ascendants to listen to me. This is important. There's a potential for you to release old beliefs about your own darkness. I'm going to repeat that. There is a real potential for Scorpio ascendants to release belief systems that they've had that might have judged as wrong and bad their own shadowed qualities, their own darker aspects, their own history that's wounded. Because believe it or not, Scorpios, like all of the other zodiac signs, all have woundings, number one, but all have, well, depending on the blueprint, all have shame narratives around different aspects of our own faults. Okay, so people can perceive their own woundings as wrong and bad, right? And shame is a big, huge thing. It's my work with clients has brought that to light exceedingly clearly. Okay, so there's a new level of honoring, letting go of judgments about your own darkness, about your own shadows, about your own wounds, about your own past, about your own patterns. You are human, you are whole, and you are to value and integrate all of these segmented aspects of self, as is every other sign, by the way. But there's something very specific here for Scorpio that this is unfolding. Now, as you release old beliefs, there's a new level of empowerment that comes with mind and with communications, and it's going to impact your work because the trine to the 6th house is with Mars and Eris. So there's a level of positive, benefic impact to your work. Something will innervate, activate, lead. There's some level of leadership with your work that can really, really come about here. Okay. And again, with the North Node in the eighth house, there's a new level of potency, a new real embodiment that's coming out to play for you. But keep in mind that sixth house to Mars Eris, Mars Eris in the sixth house is also the house of health. So you're going to want to understand that part of the activation with this eclipse is that there's a link between your belief systems as it relates to your plutonic qualities and patterns and wounds that's impacting your health. And if you are not growing and evolving, if you're not letting go of those beliefs, if you cling to them and you're going against the evolutionary process, please understand that Mars Eris in your sixth house will create inflammation, will create disharmony and disruption, will create quote unquote discord and strife. Do you understand? I want you to really listen to this, because for those of you with sixth house implications here, which are a few of you, Cancer has it, Cancer Ascendant, Leo has it impacted, and Scorpio has it impacted. I mean, so we want to pay attention. Those of you with sixth house activations, you want to really pay attention here. Okay. Sagittarius. If you were born with the Sagittarius ascendant, of course, this particular eclipse is happening in your first house. Now, if you were born with a very late degree Sagittarius ascendant, it's actually happening in your 12th house, right? But if you were born between 1 degree Sagittarius and 23 degrees essentially, then this is happening in your first house. This eclipse is about belief systems of self. It's about your self-knowledge too. Something is eclipsing out that you thought you knew about yourself. Some truth about your identity that you thought you knew, that you believed, is shaking you up. There's something shaking you up here. Something new, some new revelation about who you are, quite literally. Okay? Some new activation too. For Sagittarian ascendants, with this eclipse in the first house, there is some possibility, a real possibility, to release what is impacting or halting your vitality. So, for example, Sagittarians will find, I think a lot of Sagittarians will find, with the South Node moving through your first house, that you will, if you cling to old beliefs and constructs of identity based on what other people said who you were, and other people told you you were supposed to be X, Y, or Z in your life, in the roles that you play in your career or whatever. But it's almost like you're living an identity based on dogma, based on somebody else's projection. There's a possibility here for you to release from that. If you don't, because that South Node is continuing to move through your first house for a while, you will find that your energy will be impacted. So, vitality issues, head issues, issues with your eyes, with your head, headaches, all kinds of stuff. There's going to be implications here that's going to impact you. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that. So for the first house, please pay attention to, who do you believe you are? Who do you believe you are? And if you want clarity about that, by the way, natal analyses, and you can check my services if you're interested. I have currently a reduced natal analysis price for December. But for those of you who don't already understand their natal blueprint, the beliefs of self, no matter who you are, no matter what sign you are, is very specific to you. It's very specific. It's based on your own distinct blueprint. So for Sagittarians, though, their whole identity, at least for Yeah, for anybody with a Sagittarius ascendant, really. It's like your identity is based on belief systems, which is based on past, it's based on dogmas, it's based on philosophies, it's based on all kinds of things. All right? That's a big deal because ultimately the growth edge would be to understand that and to move into a new iteration or an evolved iteration of self-belief. So there's a possibility here for you now to re-believe, to understand clearly about what belief was keeping possibly you bound to a certain role or whatever, a certain way of operating in this world, and a certain way of perceiving things. Okay. So seeing things from your own belief system, seeing life, projecting out how you see things from your own filter of belief, which, by the way, everybody does, but Sagittarians ascendants specifically do that. And it is a specific growth edge. So your second house is impacted, which is the house of self-value, self-worth, and income. So as you understand with clarity what you've been believing about yourself, which is no longer correct or was never correct, and you pop out of that illusion, your worth, your sense of self-worth will grow. It will change, it will transform, it will mature, and your money will correlate with that. This is trining perfectly your fifth house. So there's a new energy and driver, perhaps even a new disruptive force of creative flow that's coming through you of your individuated processes. So for you, feeling a little bit more confident, feeling more courageous, feeling more risk taking, feeling more creative. There's a real possibility for you to have more of a creative flow emerge for you. Okay. This is very juicy, Sag. Really. Okay. Um, and you as a self might feel that you want to be a bit disruptive. In fact, what I would say is for those Sagittarian ascendants who are succumbing to the South Node Mercury Sun Moon position, okay, keep in mind Sun and Moon, new moon eclipse is correlated with the mind and with patterns, old patterns. South Node is what needs to be released, everybody. So for some Sagittarians, they will feel very entitled to their dogma. They won't call it dogma, they'll call it truth. Okay. So people will be very identified with their idea of truth. Okay. And they will, because of the Eris fifth, will take risky action, perhaps, that can be violent. It's a possibility for some, right? Hopefully not any of you listening to my recording, but you never know. So, yeah, this is a matter of awareness here. It's like, what's the patterning that's calling to be eclipsed out? People can either grip to it and go against the evolutionary trajectory, or they go with the flow of the evolution. Okay. And by the way, because the North Node for Sagittarian ascendants is over there in the seventh house in Gemini, guess what the evolution is? It's about becoming open to other people's truths, open to other people's minds, conversations, ideas, knowledge, right? Very key here. Very key. Capricorn, if you were born with a Capricorn ascendant, this particular eclipse is happening in your 12th house. Okay. Now, 12th house process, again, Sun, Moon, Mercury, and South Node. This is about this kind of existential aspect to the Capricornian ascendant person, that there is an aspect of the inner self that is unconscious. It's an unconscious process. It's an unconscious quality set that this eclipse can create a revelation, an awareness to something that you have kept secret from yourself. And you haven't done that intentionally, of course. It's because we're talking your archetypal 12th house. This is the stuff that's veiled, the karmic processes that play out without our awareness until we become aware of our own stories and patterning and specific narrative. And then we engage with that growth process. We then wake up to these inner narratives driving our patterning. For Capricorn ascendants, revelation can come that can bring clarity to the fact that a lot of the things that have happened in the Capricorn life have been, number one, karmic. They've been functional, meaning they're not random, they're not by accident, you're not being punished. They're functional. So the work for Capricorns here is to understand, okay, what's been the function? These awful things perhaps have occurred in my life. What on God's green earth would be the function of that? Well, everything. You have to look at it. This is about sitting with it. The revelation too for Capricorns is about isolating. Isolating not in your house because of COVID restrictions, but isolating because that's the call now. There's a level of new alignment, Capricorn ascendant people, of inner and outer self based on a truth of the foundation of your consciousness. In other words, go deeper, investigate deeper, and understand why karmically beliefs have played a ruling role for you, an important role for you, a critical role in all of the patterns that have played out in your life. Isn't that a wake-up call? Because when you start to realize that your beliefs have been driving the patterning, specifically for Capricorn ascendants, karmically, then you have to understand that, okay, there's meaning and function to it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really, if I have some pain body coming up, if I have some old memories and stuff coming up, I'm going to write these stuff. I'm going to write them down here. I'm going to investigate. I'm going to sit in quiet with my cell phone turned off without distraction here. And I'm going to understand what the truth of me is. Who am I as a conscious being? Who am I as a spiritual being? Existentially, what's my narrative here? And what am I here to do? There is a level of purpose that might come to light for Capricorn ascendant people, okay? The first house is being impacted. This is the house of you. It's the house of your energy. It's the house of your projected identity, your physical body, your clothes, hair, makeup, So, but it's the house of your construct of self as well. How you identify yourself. I am X. Okay. So at these deep levels for you, there's great shift and change occurring. There's a level of release of old belief patterns and thus old patterning in general that can be catalyzed. There can be a new level of patterning that can emerge for Capricorns if you're awake, if you're aware, if you're grounded, and if you listen, and if you're an open student to it. Okay. And you will be impacted. Your energy will be impacted. The way you visually look will be impacted. Your vitality will be impacted. And your construct of self, how you identify yourself, will also be impacted. Again, when we're looking at the North Node positioning for Capricorn, we're looking at the 6th house. So there's a level of service here that Capricorn ascendants are to take, potentially. Again, all of you might have a different layout in your blueprint, but for a lot of you, archetypally speaking, the Capricorn ascendant person, the growth arc, the North Node in the 6th house in Gemini, is about coming out and communicating from the space of inner wisdom based on your own experiences. It's about being of service through your mind, your intellect, your spoken word, your written word, right? The 4th house, the trine to the 4th house with Mars and Eris, means that there could be a little bit of anger. You might find that for some of you, I definitely see that there's some repressed anger and disruption maybe as a result of the anger, resulting from the understandings that come to light. In other words, secrets or things that you just weren't aware of, things that were veiled outside of your awareness, suddenly come to awareness, and this might spark some inner anger and rage. You might have some feelings that arise that can be anger directed at mother or family members or your upbringing, right? But the thing to understand is all is well because your life reflects your blueprint and your blueprint is yours. So understanding the dynamics of your life experience as it relates to you as a storied individual is key. But there also might be some passion and some the desire to really move in the direction of your true desires. That's also indicated here. It's like the deep revelation occurs, the self becomes anew, and the driver or the desires for you are innervated. I guess that's a word. They're excited and brought into action. They're catalyzed. Okay. So this is quite good for Capricorn. For those of you with Aquarius ascendant, this particular eclipse is happening in the 11th house. This can bring something quite interesting because it could be that for a lot of you that you are involved with some group. Okay. This could be a group, either a spiritual group, a religious group, a group that shares a philosophy, okay, a group that shares a political affiliation, a group that shares some sort of ideology. The eclipse new moon in the 11th house definitely speaks to, hopefully, some sort of clarity and revelation as it relates to the beliefs of the group, and that you need to let it go because it doesn't apply to you. Okay. So again, the south node is here along with this eclipse. This is to be let go. So for those of you that feel tightly held and you feel like you belong to a group that shares a philosophy or a dogma or a position or an affiliation, your path is to move into your own thinking, your own mind, and your own individuated expression, your creative expression, your skilled expression. In other words, it's about moving out of the group. So there's a clarity as it relates to the group, and do you belong there or do you not? Because of the dynamics of this eclipse, you don't. Now, I say that in a general way. Of course, there's going to be some affiliations that you have that you're going to need to really do your inquiry around. You know, why is it that I belong with this group? Why is it that I need to belong? Do I have a fear of not belonging? If I don't belong, will I die? Is it a survival mechanism that's deeply, deeply bound in your subconscious layer, right? If there's a need to belong, if there's a fear of not belonging, it's because you've been ousted by a tribe back in the distant past and you died. So really question why the need to affiliate with a group with similar ideology, right? Very important that. Your 12th house is being impacted, which means that on a spiritual level, on the consciousness level, your consciousness, your deep, deep unconscious layer of self, okay, your higher self, is, and this also speaks to different things, which I'll talk about, but at a very deep existential level, the clarity that's coming with regards to group affiliation and ultimately the goal to go into your own independent minded, individuated, creatively expressed confident self, it is impacting your patterning in this life. It's impacting karmic situations for you. It's impacting you. In other words, it can free you up. If you move into the evolutionary path, it's freeing you up, Aquarius. Okay. It's trining the third house with Mars Eris. Um, so there's going to be energy of thought, of curiosity, of communications. There can be communications that create issues or that can be disruptive. Okay. So for some of you, I have to tell you, for some of you, probably not a lot of you listening to this recording, but for some of you, I have to tell you, this particular eclipse happening with the 11th house, especially with the trining to Mars Eris third house, this can look like people that are very bound to their group affiliation will stick to it. For some people, they'll stick to it. They're not going in the evolutionary trajectory, but those that do stick to this will create karma for themselves, and they will also create disruption through communications, whatever that looks like. Could it be that the disruption comes in the form of social unrest locally in communities? Yeah, it could. Okay. So for some of you, this looks dogmatic and assertive, and you're creating your own karma. For others of you, you're releasing karma because you're becoming aware and you're stepping into your independent mind, thinking, and individuated self. And there's a new passion and confidence of the mind and a desire to learn and express, even if that means not doing it in a polite manner, right? It might be that you're going to be blunt, right? Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, is blunt and to the point. So there is a level of disruptive communication that may indeed come about with regards to this process. Pisces, if you were born with a Pisces ascendant, it's very likely that this particular new moon eclipse is happening in your 10th house of goals and career. This is big. This is really big because any beliefs that you've held with regards to the path that you were meant to go in, or the life that you were meant to build, or the life pattern or the lifestyle that you were meant to grow into or create, or the career that you have. Okay. So the beliefs with regards to path and career hopefully you'll become awakened to something. It's like, why am I doing this career? Why am I doing this work when it's not my true bliss? It's not my optimal bliss. It's not my desire right now in my life. According to my progressed unfolding of my blueprint, this is not my path right now. So there's some new level of awakening and clarity as it relates to your career, but also your life goals, which is important. And it's impacting your 11th house, which means that hopes, wishes, and dreams can continue to be transformed between now and over the next few years. New dreams to be formed and built, for example. But there's also transformations and things happening with regards to group, specifically for Pisces, because the 11th house is it's governed by uh, let's see, Sag Cap. I'm sorry, for some reason. Yeah. So we have your 10th, 11th, 12th, and 1st. So for you, Capricorn is your 11th house, right? So for you, quite specifically, Pisces, there's something with regards to um, working with groups with your career, for example. So either your teaching groups or your a leadership point or a point that manages correlating or bringing people together. Maybe like, for example, workshops or retreats or whatever it might be that will bring people together. It is implicated here. And so there's something about the career alteration, the awareness about old beliefs keeping you tied to something that's not really you anymore or never was. And it's going to involve groups at some point. Could this start to manifest in 2021? Potentially. It depends on your blueprint. Okay. So groups, friends, and career as it relates with groups and friends is implicated. And it's trining your second house. This is excellent because this is implying that there's a flow of energy to the new beliefs and new beginnings arising for you, you letting go of the old and allowing and opening into the new that will activate a new level of self-worth and a new level of income stream, either at a new increased level or maybe even via diverse modes. But there's more value that you're giving yourself. And because self worth is reflected in monetary value, there's more value being brought forward here. Okay. So beautiful, everybody. I mean, this is a potent, powerful time here. Okay. The other thing that I'll just state as we close out is one last thing. Let me get this centered here. Okay. So, one thing that I'd like to just point out, everybody, is the fact that this particular new moon is happening at 23 degrees Sag. And you want to pay attention to what planets or angles you have at this point. Okay. um, and or what planets or points you have squaring or trining this point. Okay, so for example, if you have planets or angles at 23 degrees Leo or Aries or Sag, then there's going to be real benefic activation that's going to, keep in mind, trines can make us a bit lazy because we become complicit. The energy flows so easily. We can ignore the, you know, let's say the urgency of action, excuse me, to be taken with a particular activation. So the trine can make us very complacent as opposed to energized and activated to take action, right? That's why the squares can be quite good. They create friction, but they also create a drive for energetic movement, right? So for you, for all of us, we want to pay attention to what planets or angles we have at 23 degrees Sag, what we have at 23 Leo and Aries, and also what we have squaring this point. So, in other words, what do we have squaring this 23-degree point? Do you have anything at 23 degrees Pisces or um, uh, Virgo? Okay. The opposition point, of course, is 23 degrees Gemini. So those are for those of you with those activations, you want to take a look at your chart and see exactly how this alteration and change, this new alignment to self, hopefully a release of belief systems as it relates to your emotional self, your upbringing, your mother, your family, your past, and as it relates to your personality or your gifts or your skills or your joy or your optimism. It's like all kinds of judgments here are asked to be released and let go of here. Okay, as it relates to your thinking or the way you learn, the way you communicate, the way, all of this stuff, right? So old beliefs, old judgments, things that you asserted were true, no, they're not true. And questioning them is going to get you that clarity. But certainly going with the flow of this particular eclipse is going to get you that clarity too. Okay. I'm going to leave it there, everybody. I hope that this was helpful for you. I send you much love and support. For my members, you'll look for something from me later today. I love you. More soon. For the collective, for the general public that's listening, I have 2 services that are currently reduced for the month of December: the natal analysis in depth and the 2021 analysis. Okay. Both of those I recommend for any of you who have the budget and the desire to get clarity there. Okay. So you can check out the information and the links, all of the data is in my website, which is below in the description. You can get to the link there for my website. Okay. Alrighty, everybody. I send you lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.